Hi guys, welcome to FitLife SD TV. Today we're going to be going over some training tips on how to bring thickness to the upper and the center part of the back. Okay, this is Keir, he's one of our trainers. We're getting him ready for contests sometime in the next 8 months, and that's kind of a lagging body part of his. So what we're going to be doing is anytime you want to work on a lagging body part, you want to start with a really big moving exercise to really target that muscle. So that's where, like, if people want a big chest, they're gonna hit a really big bench press, and they're gonna do flies and other things, but those are accessory movements. But the most important thing is to find a way to really overload that muscle. So if we look at the trapezius, or what people call the traps, let's look at here over here. If you turn around. So a lot of people think the traps is just this part that you see popping up here, but the trapezius muscle is a very large muscle that moves down the center of the back. And to get these big, you also got to get this whole area big. So what you got to do is find a big mover, something like a bench press or a deadlift, a squat, something that you know is really going to load that muscle. What I find is a rack pull is really good, because if we come over here to the rack pull, it's very similar to a standard deadlift. However, you're starting at a higher height. So you're taking a lot of the posterior chain out. So if you do a regular deadlift from the floor, you start with your calves, it's gonna move up to your hamstrings, low back, and then at the end it's gonna load the trapezius. Your trapezius is stronger than all of those. So if you start by taking the weaker links out and get it high enough where all you're doing is loading the trapezius, you'd be surprised how strong the trapezius is and how you probably never really challenged it. So we're gonna see exactly today how strong Keir really is. We're gonna see how strong I am. I haven't done rack pulls in a while, but this is one way to really fire up your traps, get the trapezius going, and get that overall middle back thickness. So let's go ahead and start with some warm-ups. Go ahead and get 10 rack pull reps right here. One little trick, you want to give yourself enough room in this so that when you pull, you come down, you don't fall off your guard. So give yourself a little bit more room for margin of error. Another 25 on. As it starts to get heavy, for you guys watching, you want to start without having a weight belt on, because you want to get as much core strength as you can before you absolutely need it. But as we get heavier, we're going to have to make sure we watch each other. When we start to feel like that pressure is too much to hold, we want to start putting on the right equipment so that we can really go heavy without risking developing a hernia or anything like that. So always be mindful of that. kind of get used to just kind of like pulling, gripping it, and ripping it. But you're really going to develop the strength if you really just focus on that muscle and make the muscle do the work. So as I throw my hips back, I know it's getting heavier. I'm going to start going a little bit slower so I can really get that mind and muscle connection. About to get hurt, and you're controlling the ascension and the descension a lot better like that. If something's going to go wrong, you'll have more time to react versus you're going fast and you kind of like just feel something snap. So you want to make sure you're looking out for that. So let's go ahead and throw another 35 on. Say we throw 35 on there. You feel good jumping that high?
Yeah.
Okay. Throw another 35 on there. That'll turn into 45. So now we can see that trapezius muscle really fire off. That big giant diamond in the back in between the shoulder blades. Push back, keep your core tight. There you go. Good. All right. That's good. Let's just be mindful that we're putting a lot of weight on the machines. Yeah, look at the bar start to bend. All right. Starting to feel a little heavy, huh?
I feel like I throw another 45 on there.
Let's throw another 45 on there then. All right, so we've determined that this is a pretty good working weight for us today, which is 495, pretty respectable. Always remember that you could lift more when you're doing a rack pull than a traditional deadlift. So but we're gonna work with this and really try to overload our trapezius for about 3 good sets. As many as you can. The keys to this overloaded. Numbers are arbitrary, remember? Not really.
Yep.
So this is your second set.
Alright, so this is the last set, right?
Last set for you, I got one more.
This is all an effort to make things as easy as possible. This is our last set, we're doing 495. So when I come up to this bar, I'm making sure my feet are where they need to be so that I have a great foundation to start with. Make sure this bar is close up to me, like John had to remind me before. All I want to focus on is going straight up. That's it. So if I can make that as easy as possible, it makes this half the battle. There it is.
All right, so we just finished with the rack pull, doing 3 heavy sets. It's always good to start out with your heaviest mover first. But again, we want some accessory movements just like we do any other muscle group. So a good thing to do is a good shrug, but done the right way. A lot of people do shrugs this way because they think of the traps as just this part you can see. But anytime you want to put mechanical tension properly on a muscle, you want to ask yourself, what is the purpose of that muscle? So if we ask ourselves that about the trapezius, it's to actually aid in scapular retraction, okay? So when we talk about pulling back the scapula, like when they say, act like you're pinching something, a pencil in between your shoulder blades. That's scapular retraction, okay? Your trapezius does that. So if we could find a way to get our other movements out, our arms, our elbows, our shoulders, and just load the scapula or the scapular movement plane, then you're really gonna overload the trapezius, keeping in mind that it is a big mover. So the way to really isolate it is to try to load up as much weight as possible. So with this little contraption we're doing here, we're gonna do a variated shrug the right way so that we can actually grow the trapezius, which will make your upper back really thick, and it'll also show up here in your upper traps, okay? So instead of just coming straight up and down and missing the whole center and bottom region of the trapezius, we want to just get a little bit of a lean. And I got this weight loaded all the way almost to the bottom of the stack. Just something good to brace yourself and really only retract the scapula. It's gonna feel like a really short range of motion, but as you get used to it, that 2 inches of movement, it's gonna feel like you're really getting a nice pump in that scapular plane. So this, you really wanna go as heavy as you can because you really wanna wear out that trapezius. So the biggest thing is we want to get the whole idea of shrugs out of our head, almost like stop saying that, because the first thing people start doing is this, and they miss 80% of the muscle that they're trying to grow because they can't see it. They're looking at the mirror muscle, but not what's behind. So instead of saying, let's do a shrug, let's do a retraction. Retract, scapular retract, scapular retraction. If you keep that in your mind, instead of a shrug, then we'll actually make the right mind to muscle connection. We'll be able to execute and overload it and get that thickness, all right? So you're up. Perfect. Retract, good. Really focus on it. Try to hold it up at the top position for a little bit longer and then slowly release. That's how you're gonna really load it. Overload that guy, there you go. And we see, just like any other muscle group, we can see a nice stretch. You want to get the nice stretched position, and you want to see a good concentric movement. And so we're seeing a full range of motion in that small little region. See, so as he's starting to fatigue, it becomes very normal to try to compensate by bending the elbows. The more you cannot do it, there you go. The more you can just make the trapezius do the work. So the biggest part of making any lagging muscle part or muscle group work and grow is to make it do the work, what we're saying. So looking really good. Okay. All right, guys, so pretty much what we did today was we did 2 very good movements that will help us to overload the trapezius so we can get that back thickness. Now, keep in mind when you're going heavy, and as I said, we want to overload it. When you're going heavy, you don't want to focus on getting a whole lot of volume because a few movements with the right amount of weight is going to do the job. Okay, so what we did was 3 rack pulls, very heavy. Okay, that's not an exercise where you want to go to failure, where you start breaking down in form. Just milk what you can in 3 solid movements, making each of those 3 sets work. And then our accessory was the scapular retraction, that variated shrug. So you would normally program this in a back day. So that would give you a total of 6 to 7 working volume sets for the trapezius alone. And then if you do other things like your normal lat pull downs, your seated cable rows, your bent over rows, whatever you do, if you're doing it from a little bit higher pulling motion, you're also going to engage that trapezius also. So that's going to help round out any extra volume you need, as well as work the rest of your back out on that back day. So if you got any questions on how to work back muscles, any muscles, how to be a little bit taller when you're standing next to a really tall guy, just shoot us a message. And we'll be sure to get back to you with any training, nutrition, any tips that we have that's cutting edge. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe.